The Northern Star slowed as it approached the massive space station. Commander Susan Black stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Earth had finally made contact with alien life 6 months ago. Now they were invited to meet the Galactic Council. "Receiving docking instructions," said Paul Wright from his communications station. His fingers moved quickly over the screen. "They want us to use the diplomatic bay." Susan nodded. "Take us in, Lieutenant Gray." The pilot, Alan Gray, guided their ship toward the glowing blue opening in the station. The Northern Star was humanity's pride, sleek, powerful, and built to showcase the best of human engineering. Today, it carried Earth's first diplomatic team to meet representatives from 27 alien civilizations. "Nervous?" asked Olivia Martinez, the science officer, as she joined Susan at the viewport. "Should I be?" Susan replied with a small smile. "We're about to meet aliens who have been part of an interstellar community for thousands of years, while we've barely left our solar system. I'd say a few butterflies are normal." The ship docked with a gentle bump. Susan straightened her uniform and addressed the diplomatic team assembled in the launch bay. 8 humans stood ready, a carefully selected group representing Earth's diversity and expertise. "Remember, we're here to learn and to introduce ourselves peacefully," Susan said. "Our job is to make a good first impression." The airlock opened, revealing a reception area filled with beings of different shapes, sizes, and colors. Susan led her team forward, trying not to stare at the variety of life forms. Some had fur, others scales, and a few seemed to be made of something like living crystal. A tall, fox-like creature with silver fur approached them. "Welcome to Central Station, humans. I am Threll, Jr., attached to the Volpari delegation. I will guide you to the council chambers." Susan offered the greeting gesture they had been taught during first contact. "Thank you for your welcome. We are honored to be here." As they walked through the station's wide corridors, Susan noticed how other aliens moved aside, watching the humans with what seemed like caution or even fear. She whispered to Olivia, "Are we that scary looking?" Olivia shrugged. "Maybe they're just curious." The council chamber was a vast room with tiered seating arranged in a circle. In the center was a platform where speakers could address the gathered representatives. The human delegation was shown to their seats while various alien species filled the chamber. An older Volpari with white-tipped ears and elaborate clothing stepped onto the central platform. "I am Elder Counselor Zivix of the Volpari Collective. Today we welcome representatives from the planet Earth, a newly discovered civilization from the spiral arm of our galaxy." Zivix gestured for Susan to join him. As she walked to the platform, she felt hundreds of alien eyes studying her. "Please introduce your species to the council," Zivix said. Susan took a deep breath. "I am Commander Susan Black of Earth. We are called humans, and we come seeking peaceful exchange of knowledge and friendship with the galactic community." She continued with the prepared speech, describing Earth's history, technology, and hopes for the future. The aliens listened quietly until she mentioned humanity's development from hunter-gatherers to farmers. To their current civilization, a ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Zivix's ears twitched backward in what Susan guessed was surprise. "Or alarm. You were hunters who became builders?" asked a green, insect-like being from one of the upper tiers. "Yes," Susan replied. "We evolved as omnivores. We eat both plants and animals. Our ancestors hunted for meat but also gathered plants. Over time, we developed agriculture and technology." The murmurs grew louder. Zivix raised a paw for silence. "Perhaps. There is confusion in translation," he said. "Are you saying that the same individuals who hunt are also the ones who build your cities and spaceships?" Susan looked puzzled. "Yes, of course. We're all the same species." The chamber erupted in sounds, clicks, whistles, and words and languages the translators couldn't handle fast enough. Zivix seemed deeply troubled. "In our galactic society," he explained slowly, "sentient species develop along specific evolutionary paths. Those who evolved from herbivores became the civilian species, the builders, thinkers, and leaders. Those who evolved from carnivores serve specialized roles, primarily in security and military functions. A large reptilian creature with sharp teeth and armored skin stood up from across the chamber. What the elder means is that predators and civilians are separate species everywhere in known space. Except, apparently, on your world. Susan looked back at her team, seeing their confusion mirrored in her own thoughts. Could you demonstrate your dual nature? Zivix asked carefully. Susan wasn't sure what he meant, but she tried to explain. Any human can be both aggressive and gentle, both analytical and instinctive. We contain multitudes, as one of our poets said. No, a demonstration, insisted the reptilian creature. Show us your predator abilities. Susan hesitated, then nodded. To Officer Ben Wilson, their security specialist. Ben stepped forward and performed a quick series of martial arts moves, ending by breaking a sample piece of the station's building material they had been given earlier. The chamber went silent. And now, said Susan, the same man will show you something else. She handed Ben a small electronic device they had brought as a gift. Ben carefully disassembled it, improved its power circuit, and reassembled it in under a minute. The same. Hands that can break are the hands that build, Susan explained. This is true for all humans. The silence in the room felt heavy. Zivix and the other council members exchanged troubled looks. This is unprecedented, Zivix finally said. We must discuss these revelations in private. Please return to your ship while the council deliberates. As they were escorted back, Threll, the young Volpari guide, walked close to Susan. They're afraid, Threll whispered. No species in our records can do what you just showed. The predator. Species are kept separate from civilian work for safety. The idea that you can be both challenges everything. Back on the Northern Star, Susan called her team together. Something's wrong, she said. They're treating us like we're dangerous just because we can both fight and build. We are dangerous, Ben said quietly. But that's not all we are. A message appeared on the ship's communication system. The delegation will remain quarantined. Until further notice. The Council requires time for study and assessment of the human biological anomaly. Susan looked at her team, worry clear in her eyes. It seems our first contact just got complicated. We need to understand what we're dealing with here and fast. Outside their viewports, they could see ships moving into position around them. They weren't being welcomed. They were being contained. The Northern Star remained docked but surrounded by alien vessels. 3 days had passed since the council meeting. The human delegation was allowed to stay on their ship but not leave it. Guards watched the docking bay at all times, Paul Wright sat at his communications station, rubbing his tired eyes. As the ship's communications officer, he had been working around the clock trying to understand the alien signals around them. Something didn't feel right? Found anything interesting? Susan asked as she entered the bridge, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Paul accepted one gratefully. Maybe there's a lot of encrypted traffic since our meeting with the council. More than seems normal for diplomatic discussions. Can you break the encryption? Paul smiled slightly. Already working on it. Their systems are advanced, but they don't expect us to be looking. I've identified patterns in the data streams. Susan leaned over his shoulder, looking at the screens filled with code. What have you learned so far? The council members are divided about us. Some think we should be welcomed. Others think we're dangerous. Paul pulled up another screen. But there's something else. These communications here don't match the others. They're coming from outside the station, and they started right after our presentation? Susan frowned. A third party? I think so. Someone is very interested in our situation and sending a lot of messages about us. Paul typed rapidly, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. Got it. Translating now. The alien text transformed into English on the screen. Susan read aloud, Human biology presents unacceptable competition. Council fears must be amplified. Recommend Containment Protocol 7. That doesn't sound friendly, Susan said. Can you trace the source? Paul nodded, working on it. But look at this. The sender identifies as Draconid Command. In another part of the ship, Olivia Martinez was having an unexpected visitor. The young Volpari attach, Threll, had been granted permission to interview the humans for cultural research. The guards watched from a distance. "Your species is causing quite a stir," Threll said quietly as they sat in the ship's small meeting room. His silver fur shimmered under the lights. "Nothing like this has happened in recorded council history." "We didn't mean to upset anyone," Olivia replied. "We just answered truthfully about who we are." Threll leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The truth is what's disturbing everyone. You need to understand our galactic structure. For millions of years, every known intelligent species evolved along strict biological lines. Plant eaters became the builders of civilization, like my people, the Volpari. Meat eaters became the protectors and warriors." "That makes some sense from an evolutionary standpoint," Olivia said. "Herbivores often develop complex social structures while carnivores develop hunting skills." "Exactly. But these differences created our entire galactic society. The civilian species build the stations, run the governments, develop the technology. The predator species serve as military, security, and enforcement." Olivia considered this. "So when we showed up able to do both? You challenged the very foundation of our social order," Threll finished. "Some civilian council members see hope in your example, others see chaos. But the predator species see something else entirely. What's that?" Threll glanced at the guards, then whispered, "Competition. The arrangement between civilian and predator species isn't as equal as we pretend. Most civilian worlds pay heavy protection fees to their predator allies. Some might call it a sophisticated protection racket." Olivia's eyes widened. "And we threaten that system because we can protect ourselves. Worse than that. You could teach other civilian species to protect themselves too." Back on Earth, Admiral William Jones reviewed the encrypted message from the Northern Star. Susan had managed to send a brief update about their situation using a hidden communications channel. "They've been quarantined," he told the emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. "And there's evidence that a species called the Draconids is working against our delegation." "What do we know about these Draconids?" asked General Amy Rivera. "Very little. Based on the name and Susan's description of a reptilian species at the council, we think they're the lizard-like beings. Possibly apex predators based on the galactic social structure they've discovered." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. "We can't leave our people unprotected," Admiral Jones said finally. "I'm proposing we send the Second Fleet to their coordinates. Not to start a fight, but to be ready if one comes to us." The council voted unanimously to approve the mission. Within hours, 5 Earth warships were preparing to depart, led by the flagship Western Wind on the Northern Star. Ben Wilson was helping Susan prepare for their return to the council chamber. They had received notice that the deliberations were complete and the human delegation was expected to attend. "They'll be looking for any sign of aggression," Susan said as she straightened her uniform. "We need to appear completely non-threatening," Ben nodded. "While being ready for anything, I've briefed the security team. No visible weapons, but everyone has emergency equipment concealed in their uniforms." Susan looked at her team gathered in the launch bay. 8 humans against an entire galactic society. Let's hope we don't need to use any of it. As they were escorted through the station, Susan noticed more guards than before. Many were reptilian, with body armor and energy weapons. The Draconids. She assumed the council chamber seemed tense when they entered. Fewer representatives were present, and those who remained sat in clear groupings. The herbivore species on one side, the carnivores on the other. Elder Zivix looked tired as he took the central platform. "The council has reached a decision regarding humanity." Susan stood beside him, her face calm despite her racing heart. "After careful consideration of the unique biological nature of humans, the Council has determined that your species represents a fundamental challenge to galactic order." Zivix's voice was formal, as if reciting a prepared statement. "While some see potential in your dual nature, others see great risk." A large Draconid stepped forward, his scales gleaming dark green under the chamber lights. "I am General Vex of the Draconid Empire. My delegation has proposed a resolution that has been accepted by the Council." Susan noticed how several of the civilian representatives looked down, avoiding eye contact. "Humanity will be restricted to your home solar system," General Vex announced. "A Draconid security force will establish a monitoring station in your system to ensure compliance. This arrangement will protect both humanity and the greater galactic community while we further study your unusual evolution." Susan felt a cold anger rising inside her. This wasn't diplomacy. This was imprisonment of her entire species. "And if we refuse this arrangement?" she asked calmly. General Vex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then more direct measures would be necessary. For everyone's safety, of course." Susan could see now what was happening. The Draconids had manipulated the Council's fear of humans to gain control over Earth, and from what Paul had discovered and Threll had revealed, this was likely just the beginning of their plans. She needed time. Time for Admiral Jones to position the Second Fleet. Time to expose the Draconid manipulation to the Council. Time to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of, both good and bad. "We request time to consult with our government," Susan said carefully. "This decision will affect our entire planet." Elder Zivix nodded quickly, seeming relieved at the delay. "Granted. You have 3 Earth days to prepare your response." As they returned to their ship, Susan whispered to her team, "Get ready. The real diplomacy is about to begin." The 3 days passed quickly. Susan spent them planning with her team and communicating secretly with Admiral Jones. The Second Fleet was now positioned just outside Council space. Hidden but ready, on the morning of their return to the Council, Susan gathered everyone in the ship's conference room. "Today we show them who humans really are," she said. "Not just that we can fight, but that we choose when to fight and when to build. That's what makes us different." Paul raised his hand. "I've found something important in the station's data network. The Draconids have been blocking messages from several civilian species who wanted to support us. The Council vote wasn't as one-sided as they made it seem." "Good work," Susan nodded. "We'll use that." "Olivia, what did you learn from Threll?" "He's arranged for several sympathetic Council members to be present today. They want to hear us out, but they're afraid of the Draconids." Susan turned to Ben Wilson. "Security status?" "We're as ready as we can be," Ben replied. "But we're still outnumbered if this turns into a fight." "Then we make sure it doesn't," Susan said firmly. "At least not on their terms." When they arrived at the Council chamber, Susan was surprised to see it packed with representatives. More than during their first appearance. Elder Zivix stood at the center platform with General Vex of the Draconids beside him. "Has humanity reached its decision?" Zivix asked as Susan joined them on the platform. "We have," Susan replied, her voice clear and strong. "But before I give our answer, we request the right to demonstrate more about human nature, to help the Council truly understand what they're dealing with." General Vex made a dismissive gesture. "We've seen enough of human capabilities. Have you?" Susan challenged. "You've seen one human break something and another human fix something. That's hardly a complete picture of a species." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zivix's ears twitched. And what Susan had learned was a sign of curiosity. "What kind of demonstration?" Zivix asked. "A series of scenarios in a controlled environment," Susan explained, "to show both our predator and civilian sides working together. Not separate as in your society, but unified." General Vex started to object, but several civilian council members voiced support for the idea. After a brief discussion, the council approved. The demonstration was set up in a large training area normally used by security forces. Council members watched from an observation deck above. Engineer Chris Bennett went first. He wore simple clothes, not his uniform, and carried no tools. The Draconid guards placed building materials in the center of the room. Alien versions of metal, plastic, and stone. "Begin," ordered General Vex. Chris stepped forward and studied the materials. Then with quick, precise movements, he began assembling them. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood materials and structure. Within minutes, he had created a small but elegant model of a building. This design would improve your station's power efficiency by 40%, Chris explained. The layout channels energy more effectively than your current system. The civilian council members leaned forward with interest. Even Zivix seemed impressed. Then, without warning, a Draconid guard attacked Chris from behind. The council members gasped, but Chris was ready. He ducked, spun, and used the guard's momentum to flip him onto the ground. The Draconid was on his back before he knew what happened. "I can build," Chris said calmly, helping the surprised guard to his feet, "and I can fight. But I choose which to do and when. That's being human." Next came Dr. Linda Harris. She was led to a medical area, where an injured Volpari lay on a treatment table. The Volpari had a deep cut on his arm, bleeding through his silver fur. "This delegate was injured in an accident," Zivix explained. "Our medical team is preparing treatment, but perhaps you would demonstrate your abilities." Linda approached the patient, her eyes gentle. "I'm a doctor. I'm here to help." "May I?" The Volpari nodded nervously. Linda examined the wound carefully, then looked at the alien medical tools provided. She selected several items and began working with confident, precise movements. "The cut has damaged a major blood vessel," she explained as she worked. Repairing it first, then the surrounding tissue?" Her hands, the same hands that could make a fist or pull a trigger, now moved with delicate care, healing rather than harming. Within minutes, she had stopped the bleeding and closed the wound. "The pain should be less now," she told the Volpari patient. "And it will heal cleanly." The Volpari touched his arm in wonder. "It already feels better. Thank you," Linda smiled. "That's what humans do. We protect and we heal." Throughout the day, each member of the human delegation demonstrated similar dual capabilities. They showed technical skills and combat reflexes, scientific knowledge and predator instincts, all within the same individuals. As the demonstrations continued, Susan noticed something changing in the council members' reactions. The fear was fading, replaced by something else, curiosity, maybe even admiration. When they returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere had shifted. Elder Zivix stepped forward. "What we have witnessed today is remarkable," he said. "For all our galactic history, we believe that predator and civilian traits must be separated between species for civilization to function. Yet humans combine both in a way that seems balanced." General Vex moved to the platform. "One day of tricks doesn't change what humans are, a dangerous anomaly that threatens our way of life." "Our way of life?" came a voice from the council. "Seats." It was Threll, the young Volpari attach. He stood, though Susan could see he was nervous. "Or your control over our way of life?" The chamber went silent. No junior member had ever challenged a Draconid general publicly. "For generations," Threll continued, his voice growing stronger, "we civilian species have depended on predator species for protection. We've paid for that protection with resources, with freedom, with control over our own destinies. We believed we had no choice." He gestured toward the human delegation. "But these humans show us another path. What if we could protect ourselves? What if the line between predator and civilian isn't fixed by biology, but by choice?" Other civilian council members began to nod. Some even spoke up in agreement. Susan saw rage building in General Vex's eyes. Zivix raised his paws for silence. "Perhaps it is time to reconsider some of our oldest assumptions. The human model suggests possibilities we have never explored." "This is absurd," General Vex snarled. "Humans are not a model. They are a threat to order, to stability, to the natural hierarchy of species." Susan stepped forward. "We are only a threat to those who profit from keeping others dependent and afraid. Humans don't want to change your society. We just want to join it as equals and share what we've learned." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various council members. "On Earth, we have a saying, give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. We could teach rather than control. For a long moment, the chamber was quiet as her words sank in. Then Elder Zivix turned to General Vex. The Council will need to vote again on the human question, with all members present this time and all communications unblocked. General Vex's scales darkened with anger. He looked at Susan with pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed quietly before storming from the platform. As the council broke into discussion groups, Susan rejoined her team. "That went better than expected," Olivia said. "Too well," Susan replied, watching the Draconids leave. The chamber in a group. Vex isn't the type to accept defeat. Be ready for anything. Little did she know how right she was. In the lower levels of the station, General Vex was already gathering his elite guards. "Prepare for Operation Human Threat," he ordered. "It's time to show the Council what happens when the natural order is challenged." Susan and her team were invited to a reception with friendly council members while they waited for the new vote to be organized. The gathering was held in a large room with windows overlooking the stars. Various alien delegates approached the humans with questions and curious looks. "You've made quite an impression," Thrall said, joining Susan near a refreshment table, "especially on the younger civilian representatives." "Your speech made an impression too," Susan replied. "That took courage." Thrall's fur rippled, and what Susan had learned was a Volpari expression of mixed emotions. "I've studied human history since you arrived. Your species has made many mistakes, but you've also shown remarkable ability to change and grow. My people need that example." Across the room, Paul Wright was scanning the area with a small device hidden in his hand. He caught Susan's eye and gave a slight shake of his head. Something wasn't right. Paul made his way casually to Susan's side. "Our friends aren't the only ones who've been busy," he whispered. "I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations in the station systems, multiple security protocols being overridden." Susan kept her face calm as she processed this information. "Alert the team quietly." Before Paul could move, the lights in the reception room flickered. Then they went out completely, leaving only the glow of the stars through the windows. Moment later, emergency lighting came on. Bathing everything in dim red, a voice came over the station's communication system. "Attention all personnel. Security breach in progress. This is not a drill. All civilians proceed to designated safe areas." Confusion spread through the room. The alien delegates looked around nervously, unsure what to do. "Stay calm," Susan called out. "Let's move together." Toward the exit. As they approached the doors, they slid open to reveal 6 Draconid soldiers in full combat gear. Their weapons were raised. "Humans," the lead Draconid announced, "you are ordered to surrender immediately. You have been identified as the source of the security breach." Susan stepped forward. "That's a lie. We've been here the entire time." "The evidence says otherwise," the Draconid replied. "Surrender now or we will use force." The alien delegates backed away from the humans, fear evident in their movements. Susan realized what was happening. The Draconids were staging an incident to discredit the humans and justify attacking them. "Council members," Susan said loudly, "this is a setup. The Draconids are trying to turn you against us." The lead Draconid fired his weapon at the ceiling. "Silence! All council members evacuate this area. We will handle the human threat." As the aliens moved toward the exit, more Draconid soldiers entered from side doors. Susan counted 15 in total, all heavily armed. Her team was surrounded. "Options?" she asked quietly. "Limited," Ben replied. "We're outgunned and in the open." Susan noticed Thrall hadn't left with the other council members. The young Volpari stood nearby, watching with worried eyes. "Thrall," Susan called out, "tell the other council members what's really happening here." The lead Draconid turned his weapon toward Thrall. "Leave now, Grass Eater, or be treated as a human collaborator." Susan saw the fear in Thrall's eyes, but also determination. The Volpari backed toward the door, but then darted down a side corridor instead of following the evacuation route. "After him," ordered the Draconid leader. 2 soldiers peeled off to pursue Thrall. Susan used the distraction to signal her team. They needed to move now. Run! She shouted, overturning a heavy table for cover as Ben and two security officers pulled out their concealed weapons. Chaos erupted in the reception room. Draconid soldiers fired energy weapons while the humans took cover behind furniture and columns, the air filled with the smell of burning metal and plastic as mist shots hit the walls and floor. "This way," Paul called, pointing to a service door he had hacked open with his communications device. The human team retreated through the door into a maintenance corridor, with the Draconids in pursuit. "Where does this lead?" Susan asked as they ran. "Station schematics show it connects to the hydroponics bay," Paul replied, checking his device. "Large area, lots of cover." They raced through the narrow corridor, the sounds of Draconid soldiers echoing behind them. When they reached the hydroponics bay, they found a vast room filled with plants growing in long rows. Water pipes ran overhead, and large lights hung from the ceiling. "Spread out," Susan ordered. "Use the environment. Remember your training." The humans dispersed among the plants just as the Draconids burst into the room. "Find them!" roared the lead Draconid. "No humans? Leave this station alive." What followed was a deadly game of hide-and-seek. The humans used their smaller size and greater agility to their advantage, moving silently between the rows of plants while the larger Draconids struggled to maneuver in the tight spaces. Officer Frank Howard found himself face to face with a Draconid soldier. Instead of firing his weapon, Frank ducked and swept the alien's legs out from under him. The Draconid fell with a crash, his weapon skittering across the floor, across the room. Olivia Martinez was using her scientific knowledge in an unexpected way. She had found the bay's control panel and was adjusting the water pressure in the overhead irrigation system. "Susan," she called through their communication link. "When I give the signal, tell everyone to take cover under the metal tables." Moments later, the pipes overhead burst with a loud crack. High-pressure water sprayed down on the Draconids, whose heavy armor began to weigh them down in the suddenly muddy floor. The humans, sheltered under the metal-growing tables, remained relatively dry. "Now, Ben!" Susan ordered. Ben Wilson and his security team emerged from cover and fired stun blasts at the disoriented Draconids. 3 went down immediately. The lead Draconid roared in frustration. Kill them all." The remaining Draconids adjusted their weapons to higher settings. The energy blasts they fired now left smoking holes in the walls. "They're switching to lethal force," Susan warned. "Be careful." Paul Wright had worked his way to a control panel near the far wall. His fingers flew over the alien interface as he hacked into the station's systems. "Got it," he exclaimed. "Susan, I've accessed the environmental controls." "Do it," she ordered. Paul pressed the final button, and the hydroponics bay's lights went out. Then the emergency lighting shut down too, leaving the room in total darkness. The humans activated the night vision lenses they carried as part of their emergency equipment. The Draconids, caught by surprise, stumbled in the dark, working together. With practiced efficiency, the human team systematically disabled the remaining Draconid soldiers. They used non-lethal tactics where possible, stunning rather than killing. When the last Draconid fell, Susan ordered the lights restored. The hydroponics bay was a mess of broken plants, water, and unconscious Draconid soldiers. "Check for injuries," Susan ordered. Her team quickly assessed each other and, to her relief, found only minor wounds. Then, to everyone's surprise, they began checking the fallen Draconids as well. Dr. Linda Harris moved from one to another, treating the worst. "Injuries, what are you doing?" asked a voice from the doorway. It was Frel, along with Elder Zivix and several other council members. They stared at the humans with wide eyes. "Treating the wounded," Linda replied simply. "Even enemies deserve medical care." Elder Zivix stepped forward, his white-tipped ears twitching with emotion. "You fought like the fiercest predators we have ever seen. Yet now you show mercy like the most evolved civilians. That's what makes us human," Susan explained. "We can be both because we choose to be both. Violence when necessary, compassion whenever possible." Before Zivix could respond, the station's alert system sounded again. A new voice came over the communication system. "Attention Central Station. This is Admiral William Jones of the Earth. Vessel Western Wind. Our sensors indicate weapons fire on the station. We are prepared to render assistance. Please respond." Susan smiled. The Second Fleet had arrived just in time. "Your people came for you," Pharrell observed. "They did," Susan agreed, "but not to fight to help. Let's show the Council what that looks like, too." The arrival of Earth's Second Fleet changed everything. 5 human warships now held position near the station, their weapons silent but ready. Inside the station, confusion and fear spread among the alien species. Many had never seen human ships before, and rumors flew about their capabilities. Admiral William Jones requested permission to board the station with a small team. After a brief emergency meeting, the Council agreed. Susan and her team waited in the main docking bay as the Admiral's shuttle arrived. When the doors opened, Admiral Jones stepped out wearing a formal uniform with no visible weapons. Behind him came not soldiers but medical personnel and engineers. "Admiral," Susan greeted him with a salute. "Welcome to Central Station." "Commander?" "Black," Jones returned the salute. "Looks like you've had an interesting diplomatic mission." Elder Zivix approached cautiously. "You bring warriors to our station?" Admiral Jones smiled. "No, Elder, I bring doctors, engineers, and assistants. We detected weapons fire and came to help, not to fight." Zivix's ears twitched in surprise. "But your ships, they are warships." "Dual-purpose vessels," Jones explained. "Capable of defense." "Yes, but also designed for rescue, research, and exploration. Like humans themselves, our ships serve many functions." The human medical team was already moving toward the injured aliens, carrying supplies and equipment. The engineers spoke with station personnel about repairing damaged systems. "See?" Susan said to Zivix. "This is humanity at its best. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." The Council called an emergency session. The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity with representatives from all species present. Even the injured Draconids were allowed to attend, though under guard. Elder Zivix took the central platform with Susan and Admiral Jones beside him. "Today we have witnessed something unprecedented," Zivix began. "An attempt to disrupt Council proceedings through violence, followed by a demonstration of what can only be called a better way," he gestured to the humans. "These visitors from Earth have shown us that the division between predator and civilian is not a biological necessity but a choice. They fought when attacked, yes, but with restraint. Then they treated the wounded, even their enemies." Susan stepped forward. "We didn't come to your council to change your way of life. We came to join your community of worlds and to learn from you, but perhaps we can offer something in return, a new perspective." Admiral Jones joined her. "Earth extends its hand in friendship to all peaceful species. We offer medical aid, technological exchange, and a new model of cooperation between different biological types." General Vex, now restrained but conscious, snarled from his position. "You speak of peace while your warships surround our station? This is conquest disguised as diplomacy." "If we wanted conquest," Jones replied calmly, "we would have fired on your ships when they attacked our delegation. Instead, we came to help." An older Draconid stepped forward from the council seats. His scales were gray with age, and he wore elaborate insignia. "I am High Commander Draz of the Draconid Empire. General Vex acted without authorization from our government. His actions do not represent our official policy." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Clearly, the Draconid leadership was distancing itself from Vex's failed coup attempt. "The Draconid Empire has always sought stability in the galaxy," Draz continued. "If this human model offers a new path to stability, perhaps it deserves consideration." Susan recognized the political maneuvering. The Draconids were cutting their losses, adapting to the new reality that humans could not be easily controlled or eliminated. Elder Zivix raised his paws for silence. "The Council will now vote on a resolution regarding humanity's status in our galactic community." The voting process was fascinating to watch. Representatives used small devices to register. Their choices and a large display showed the results in real time. Green lights for approval, red for rejection. As the votes came in, the display showed overwhelming green. When the final tally appeared, Elder Zivix looked genuinely pleased. By a vote of 23 species to 4, with 2 abstentions, the Council welcomes humanity as full members of our galactic community. Furthermore, we accept the human offer to establish cultural and technological exchange programs. Cheers erupted from many of the civilian species. Even some of the predator representatives seemed cautiously supportive. Zivix wasn't finished. Additionally, inspired by the human example, the Council will establish a new committee to explore reforms to our traditional separation of roles between species types. Voluntary cross-training programs will be developed for those who wish to participate. This announcement caused even more excitement. Susan saw Threll practically bouncing with joy among the younger Volpari delegates. The first step, Zivix continued, will be a joint human-alien task force to develop these new programs. Commander Black, would Earth be willing to host representatives from our various species to begin this work? Susan looked at Admiral Jones, who nodded. We would be honored, she replied. Earth stands ready to welcome your representatives. After the session ended, Susan's team gathered on the Northern Star to prepare for their return journey. They would be bringing 12 alien representatives back to Earth, a mix of civilian and predator species who had volunteered for the new task force. Did you ever imagine it would end like this? Olivia asked as they watched the alien delegates boarding their shuttle. Not in my wildest dreams, Susan admitted. We came looking for new friends and found a whole galaxy ready for change. Paul Wright joined them at the viewport. The best part is that we didn't have to fight a war to prove ourselves. We just had to be who we are. And who are we? Asked Ben Wilson, the security officer who had both fought and protected during their adventure. Susan thought for a moment. We're the galaxy's only species where predator and civilian are identical. But maybe we won't be the only ones for long. On the station, Elder Zivix stood with Threll, watching the Northern Star prepare for departure. Do you think we can really become like them? Threll asked. Both predator and civilian in one? Perhaps not exactly like them, Zivix replied. But we can learn to choose our paths rather than being limited by our biology. That is their greatest gift to us, the power of choice. As the Northern Star undocked and moved away from the station, Susan Black sent one final message to the Council. Earth thanks you for your welcome. We bring not perfect answers but perfect questions. Not the end of your journey, but a new beginning. Together, we will build a galaxy where all species can become what they choose to be, not just what they were born to be. Until we meet again, fair winds and clear skies to all. The Northern Star accelerated smoothly, the Earth fleet forming around it in protective formation. Behind them, the station grew smaller in the viewport, but its lights seemed brighter somehow, like a new star being born in the darkness of space. Susan smiled as she gave the order. Set course for Earth, we're bringing home some new friends. Throughout the galaxy, news spread quickly. The strange, dual-natured humans had joined the galactic community, bringing with them revolutionary ideas. On 1,000 worlds, both predator and civilian species looked to the stars with new questions and new hopes. The universe would never be the same again.